What if the most wanted man in the world isn't hiding from justice, but from an entire nation's intelligence apparatus, one that has spent decades perfecting the art of assassination, infiltration, and covert elimination? What if the hunters are no longer waiting in the shadows, but have already made their move? And what if the Western world, the media, the governments you trust, have been deliberately keeping this from you? Stay right there, because what you're about to hear will completely change how you see the Middle East, global security, and the future of one of the most dangerous conflicts in modern history. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. What we are about to unpack today is not speculation. It is not conspiracy. It is a carefully assembled picture built from intelligence reports, satellite intercepts, geopolitical movements, and the kind of information that rarely makes it past the editorial desks of mainstream newsrooms. Today, we are talking about Iran's secret and relentless hunt for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a covert operation so sophisticated, so deeply embedded in the machinery of global espionage that even senior Western intelligence officials have reportedly expressed alarm behind closed doors. And the question burning at the center of all of this is simple, but terrifying. How close have they actually gotten? To understand the full weight of what is happening right now, you have to go back, not weeks, not months, years. Because this hunt, this obsessive, institutionalized campaign to neutralize Benjamin Netanyahu did not begin with the war in Gaza. It did not begin with the Abraham Accords or the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. It began long before any of that in the cold, calculated chambers of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, known to intelligence communities worldwide as the IRGC. And inside those chambers, Netanyahu has always been more than a political enemy. He has been a symbol, a target, a mission. The IRGC is not your conventional military force. If you think of it simply as Iran's army, you are dangerously underestimating what you are dealing with. The IRGC operates simultaneously as a military, an intelligence agency, an economic empire, and a transnational terror network with tentacles reaching into Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Latin America, and even Western Europe. Its Quds Force, the elite external operations wing, has executed assassinations, kidnappings, bombings, and cyber operations across 5 continents. These are professionals. These are people who play the long game, and they have had Netanyahu in their crosshairs for a very, very long time. Now here is where it gets deeply unsettling. In the aftermath of October 7th, 2023, the Hamas attack on Israel that killed over 200 people and launched the most devastating conflict the region has seen in decades, something shifted inside Iran's intelligence apparatus. Multiple sources, including reports later confirmed by European intelligence agencies, indicated that the IRGC's Quds Force elevated Netanyahu from a standing target of interest to what operatives reportedly describe as a priority 1 elimination objective. That language is not used lightly. It means resources are being mobilized. It means networks are being activated. It means the clock is ticking in ways the public cannot fully see. And you might be asking yourself right now, why haven't we heard about this? Why isn't this on the front page of every newspaper? The answer, as uncomfortable as it is, comes down to a delicate balance of geopolitical calculation, media sensitivity, and the very real risk that public knowledge of such an operation would destabilize an already fragile international situation. When governments know that a head of state is being actively hunted, they don't broadcast it. They classify it. They compartmentalize it. They manage it quietly behind layers of security protocols and diplomatic back channels. But leaks happen, intelligence gets out, and what has been emerging piece by piece, source by source, paints a picture that is impossible to ignore. Let's talk about what we know about the specific mechanisms Iran has been deploying. because this is not a crude, improvised operation. This is a multi-layered, technologically sophisticated campaign that combines cyber warfare, human intelligence, proxy networks, and advanced surveillance in ways that rival the capabilities of the world's top intelligence agencies. The first layer is digital. Iran's cyber warfare division, which operates largely under IRGC oversight, has been documented attempting to penetrate the personal and professional communication networks of Israeli government officials at an unprecedented scale since the start of the Gaza conflict. This includes attempts to breach encrypted messaging platforms, infiltrate the devices of individuals within Netanyahu's inner circle, and map the physical movements of the prime minister through digital footprints left by those around him. The second layer is human intelligence, HUMINT, in the language of the spy world. And this is where it gets truly chilling. Israeli domestic security agency Shin Bet has, over the past 18 months, uncovered and dismantled multiple networks of individuals recruited by Iranian intelligence to conduct surveillance operations inside Israel itself. These are not foreign agents slipping across borders with fake passports. These are residents, workers, people embedded in the fabric of Israeli society who were approached, compromised, and tasked with gathering information about security routines, motorcade routes, residential patterns, and the movements of senior officials, including, according to several prosecuted cases, the prime minister himself. Think about that for a moment. The enemy is not outside the gate. In some cases, the enemy has already been inside. The third layer involves Iran's extensive proxy network, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas remnants in Gaza, militia forces in Syria and Iraq. The Houthi movement in Yemen, these are not independent actors. They are nodes in a vast operational web that Iran directs, funds, and coordinates with remarkable discipline. And in the context of hunting Netanyahu, these proxies serve a critical function. They extend Iran's reach, they provide deniability, and they create a fog of operational complexity that makes it extraordinarily difficult for Israeli and Western intelligence to anticipate the next move. A strike doesn't have to come from Tehran. It can come from Beirut, from Damascus, from a safe house in a European city, from a cargo ship in the Mediterranean. The geometry of threat has never been more complex. Now let us talk about what happened in the summer of 2024, because this is a moment that most Western media covered only superficially, and the full implications of which have still not been properly examined by the public. Following the Israeli strikes that killed senior Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr in Beirut and Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, the latter being one of the most audacious covert operations in Israeli intelligence history, Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei made a statement that was chilling in its directness. He declared that Israel would face harsh punishment and that those responsible for these killings would not escape accountability. Diplomatic language, perhaps on the surface, but intelligence analysts reading between the lines of that statement saw something different. They saw an authorization, a green light, a declaration that whatever operational constraints had previously existed on targeting Israeli leadership were now being lifted. And the timing matters enormously here, because that statement came at precisely the same moment that multiple intelligence services, American, British, German, and Israeli, were registering a significant uptick in Iranian intelligence activity targeting Israeli diplomatic and government personnel abroad. In Europe, in the United States, in Latin America, Netanyahu travels. He attends UN General Assembly sessions in New York. He meets with world leaders in capitals across the globe. Every one of those movements creates an opportunity, and Iran is watching every single one of them. There is a historical precedent for what we are discussing here that many people are not aware of, and it is both instructive and deeply sobering. In 1992, Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, assassinated Abbas Musawi, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, in a helicopter strike in Lebanon. In retaliation, Iran and Hezbollah carried out two of the most devastating terrorist bombings in history. The 1992 attack on the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, which killed 29 people, and the 1994 AMIA bombing, also in Buenos Aires, which killed 85. The lesson that intelligence professionals draw from this is a grim one. When Iran decides to retaliate against Israeli leadership, they think globally, they think asymmetrically, and they are willing to wait until the moment is precisely right. They are patient in a way that Western security cultures often struggle to fully appreciate, and patience, right now, is exactly what Iran appears to be exercising. Because despite the elevated threat level, despite the documented intelligence gathering operations, despite the proxy activations and the cyber penetration attempts, there has not yet been a direct attempt on Netanyahu's life. At least not one that has been publicly confirmed. And that restraint is, paradoxically, one of the most alarming signals of all. Because in the world of high-level covert operations, restraint does not mean inactivity. It means preparation. It means that the operation is still being built, still being refined, still being positioned for maximum impact. The absence of action is not the absence of intent. It is the presence of patience. Israeli security services have responded to this threat environment with measures that are, by any historical standard, extraordinary. Netanyahu's personal security detail, already one of the most elaborate in the world, has been significantly expanded. His travel patterns have become deliberately unpredictable. His public appearances are increasingly last minute in their announcement, with locations kept secret until moments before arrival. Communication security protocols around his office have been upgraded to levels not seen since the height of the Second Intifada. And perhaps most significantly, the Israeli intelligence community has reportedly been conducting its own preemptive operations, attempting to identify and neutralize Iranian assassination cells before they can reach operational readiness. This is the shadow war that never makes the headlines. The war fought in safe houses and encrypted servers and dark parking lots in foreign cities. The war that determines whether the visible war ever gets its most dramatic and catastrophic escalation. Let us now turn to the international dimension of this crisis, because what is happening between Iran and Israel is not occurring in a vacuum. The United States, which maintains the world's most extensive intelligence sharing relationship with Israel, has been directly involved in providing threat assessments and logistical security support related to the protection of Israeli leadership. American intelligence agencies have reportedly shared specific intercepts with their Israeli counterparts detailing Iranian operational discussions that have been alarming enough to trigger joint security reviews at the highest levels of both governments. The relationship between Washington and Jerusalem on this specific issue has, according to sources familiar with the matter, never been more operationally intimate. Meanwhile, European intelligence services, particularly those of Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, have been quietly coordinating with Israel on monitoring Iranian intelligence operatives known to be active on European soil. This coordination has resulted in the quiet expulsion of several Iranian diplomatic personnel from European capitals over the past year. Moves that were reported briefly in the press, but whose true significance, their direct connection to an assassination infrastructure targeting Israeli officials, was never fully explained to the public. These were not routine diplomatic disputes. These were surgical removals of operational assets. And the fact that they were necessary tells you everything you need to know about how seriously Western governments are taking this threat. Now, here is something that almost nobody is talking about, and it may be the most consequential piece of this entire puzzle. The International Criminal Court's issuance of an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu in November 2024 related to allegations of war crimes in Gaza created an extraordinary and deeply ironic security paradox. On one hand, the warrant has complicated Netanyahu's ability to travel freely to the 124 countries that are signatories to the ICC's Rome Statute. On the other hand, it has also inadvertently created a new layer of operational complexity for Iranian intelligence, because Netanyahu's movements are now more restricted, more predictable in some ways, and yet simultaneously more contested and contested publicly, making any operation against him both easier to plan in some theoretical respects and infinitely more diplomatically explosive in its implications. Think about what it would mean if Iran succeeded, not just in terms of the immediate human tragedy of a sitting head of government being killed. Think about the geopolitical earthquake. Think about what Israel's response would be. Think about what America's response would be. Think about the position it would put every Arab government that has been quietly normalizing relations with Israel. Think about the oil markets, the global financial systems, the NATO alliance. A successful Iranian assassination of Benjamin Netanyahu would not just be a regional crisis. It would be a world-altering event, the kind that reshapes alliances, triggers conflicts, and potentially draws multiple nuclear armed states into direct confrontation. The stakes of this secret hunt are not just the life of one man. They are the stability of the entire international order. And that is precisely why the silence around this story is so loud. Governments do not want to publicly acknowledge the full dimensions of this threat, because doing so would force them to respond in ways that could accelerate the very catastrophe they are trying to prevent. The intelligence community knows, the diplomatic corps knows, the senior military brass on 3 continents knows, but the public, the people whose lives would be most directly affected by the consequences of what happens next, are largely being kept in the dark. Until now, because here is the truth that they have been hiding. The hunt is real. The infrastructure is real. The determination is real. Iran has not forgotten. Iran has not forgiven. And Iran, for all its internal contradictions and economic pressures and domestic instabilities, remains an extraordinarily capable adversary when it comes to the specific, focused, patient work of covert operations. The Mossad is often rightly celebrated as the world's most effective intelligence agency, but the IRGC Quds Force has over 4 decades of operation, demonstrated a capacity for long-game strategic patience and transnational operational reach that commands genuine respect and genuine fear from the professionals who track it most closely. The question is no longer whether Iran wants Netanyahu dead. That question was answered long ago. The question is whether they can succeed. And the honest answer, the one that keeps intelligence analysts awake at night, is that in a world of perfect information, perfect security does not exist. No protection detail, no matter how skilled, no communication encryption, no matter how sophisticated, no travel security protocol, no matter how elaborate. None of these things provide absolute certainty. They reduce risk. They raise the cost of an attempt. They increase the probability of detection and interdiction, but they do not make the threat disappear. And in that gap between risk reduction and certainty, that narrow, terrifying gap, is where the fate of one of the most consequential figures in modern geopolitics currently hangs. We are living through a moment in history where the invisible war, the war of intelligence, covert operations, proxy forces, and cyber capabilities is more consequential than most people realize. The battles that will shape the next decade are not just being fought on the rubble strewn streets of Gaza or along the contested borders of Lebanon. They are being fought in server rooms and safe houses and embassy-backed channels and encrypted communications networks that most of us will never see or hear about. And at the center of one of the most dangerous of those invisible battles is a hunt that has been years in the making that involves some of the most capable intelligence operatives on the planet, and whose outcome in either direction will send shockwaves through the global order that none of us will be able to ignore. This is not a story about one man. This is a story about the world we are all living in right now. A world where the lines between war and peace, between open conflict and covert operation, between public knowledge and classified reality have never been more blurred. A world where what you don't know genuinely can hurt you, and where the forces shaping your future are operating in shadows that most people never look into. But you looked. You're still here. And that matters. Because an informed public, a public that refuses to accept the sanitized, carefully managed version of global events and instead demands the full picture, is the only real check on the dangerous games being played in our names, with our security and with the future of our world. Stay vigilant, stay informed, keep asking the questions that powerful people would rather you didn't ask. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and stay locked into this channel. Because the developments on this story and on the wider conflict reshaping our world right now are moving faster than almost anyone anticipated. The next update may be the one that changes everything. Don't look away.